Caleb stood in the doorway of the small apartment, his heart fluttering with both excitement and nerves. He had just signed the lease and now faced the task of meeting his new roommate. The walls were bare, the floors of pale wood that gleamed under the afternoon sun. In his hands, he clutched a single cardboard box filled with kitchen utensils. Zeri appeared from the hallway, tall and slender, with hair the color of moonlight. Their eyes were calm, almost too calm, as they smiled and offered a quiet greeting. Caleb managed a nervous wave. He noticed Zeri wore simple clothes, soft fabrics, and muted colors, and moved with a graceful ease. It felt as though they belonged more to the shadows than to the bright room. "Welcome," Zeri said, in a voice that was warm but measured. "I hope you'll feel at home here." Caleb nodded, stepping inside. He set his box on the kitchen counter and tried to make conversation. "I'm just finishing my shift at the factory. It's a bit noisy downtown, but I like it." Zeri nodded thoughtfully but said little in return. As Caleb unpacked his few dishes, he watched Zeri carry. In a large, black case, it was heavy enough to strain their shoulders, yet they handled it with careful precision. Zeri set it down near the living room wall and moved away without a word. Caleb's curiosity sparked. What was inside that case? He reminded himself not to pry. That night, Caleb lay in bed, eyes wide open. He could hear Zeri padding around in the next room. Soft thumps, the click of metal, and then a strange whispering hum. It sounded almost musical, like a distant choir. Caleb pressed his ear to the wall but could make out nothing clear. He sighed and turned onto his side, his pulse quickening with both fear and excitement. Morning light crept across the floor when Caleb woke. He stretched and yawned, then made tea in the tiny kitchen. Zeri appeared, as if summoned by habit, carrying a cup of a pale blue liquid. "Try this," Zeri offered. The taste was cool and sweet, unlike anything Caleb had ever drunk. It left a faint tingle on his tongue. Caleb smiled in surprise. Over breakfast, Zeri spoke about the building's rules. Keep noise down after 10, no pets, and always lock the door. Their tone was polite but distant, like a guest reading a manual. Caleb felt a pang of loneliness. He wished Zeri would share more about themselves, where they were from, what they liked, maybe even a bit of small talk. In the days that followed, Caleb learned Zeri's routine by watching from the hallway. Zeri left the apartment at dawn and returned after midnight. They carried strange parcels, tiny vials glowing with soft light, stacks of thin plates etched with unfamiliar symbols, and tools Caleb had never seen before. Each evening, Caleb checked the power meter. It spiked just as Zeri came home. Caleb's mind buzzed with questions. Was Zeri experimenting on something, making secret art? His imagination ran wild with possibilities. Yet each time he tried to ask, Zeri only shook their head and smiled sadly. "Some things I must keep private," they said, voice gentle but firm. Caleb respected the boundary, though it made him feel both closer and farther away. One afternoon, the hallway light flickered and died. Caleb rushed to the breaker box, but the apartment stayed dark. He heard a soft glow and saw Zeri's bedroom. Door open a crack, a weird, warm light spilled out, painting the hallway in rose and silver. Zeri seemed to move inside that glow, their outline blurred and shifting. Caleb froze, torn between concern and the urge to help. Zeri stepped into the hallway, handheld lamp in one hand and a gentle smile on their face. "It's only a minor fault," they said. They flipped a switch, and the lights returned. Caleb let out a breath he hadn't realized he held. In that moment, he felt the first real bond forming two people, or two beings, sharing a simple problem and a small relief. Later that night, as Caleb lay in bed, he thought of Zeri's kindness and their strange secrets. He felt both anxious and hopeful. This flatmate was unlike anyone he had ever known. Yet, in the silence after the day's events, Caleb found himself eager for tomorrow to learn more, to build trust, and perhaps, to discover the real story. Behind the glowing parcels and the midnight humming, he closed his eyes, imagining friendship stretching across differences. Somewhere beyond the walls, the city pulsed with life. Inside, a quiet adventure was just beginning. Late at night, Caleb sat on the edge of his bed, the only light in the room coming from the street lamps outside. He listened closely to the soft hum drifting from Zeri's closed door. It was so gentle that it sounded almost like a lullaby. Yet, beneath that calm melody, Caleb sensed a tension and energy he could not name. His heart pounded with a mix of fear and wonder. He rose and padded barefoot to Zeri's door. The humming grew louder as he approached. A faint shimmer of light slipped through the narrow crack under the door, painting the hallway floor in pale blue ripples. Caleb placed a hand on the cool wood and knocked once, twice, softly. "Zeri," he whispered. "Are you okay?" There was no answer, only the hum and the shifting glow. Caleb pressed his ear against the door, hoping to catch a clue. The sound pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and alive. He imagined all kinds of strange reasons. Was Zeri healing from an injury, or crafting some secret invention? Each thought made his stomach twist with curiosity. He remembered Zeri's gentle warning the first day. Some things must stay private. That kindness now felt like a shield and a barrier. Caleb's fingers tingled with the urge to pry, yet he reminded himself to respect his roommate's wish. He backed away, his mind racing with questions he dared not speak. Back in his room, Caleb lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Shadows danced where the walls met the roof, as if echoing the light from the next door. Sleep felt impossible. He thought of all the parcels Zeri carried in glowing vials, strange instruments, and plates etched with symbols. Now, that humming joined the silent list of mysteries. The next morning, Caleb brewed coffee and tried to look calm. He met Zeri in the kitchen, where soft sunrise light filtered through the window. Zeri handed him a steaming mug without a word. Their eyes held a gentle warmth, but Caleb noticed a flicker of sadness, as though Zeri regretted something unspoken. Caleb offered a small smile and said, "I hope you slept well." Zeri nodded, whispering, "Thank you." The pause that followed felt heavy. Caleb wanted to ask again about last night, but he swallowed the question. Instead, he offered to share his oatmeal. Zeri drank the coffee and accepted a spoonful, but they ate in silence. Caleb realized that curiosity, however natural, could also push someone away. When evening came, the hum began again. This time Caleb felt braver. He retrieved pen and paper and scrawled a note. "I heard you last night. I am not angry. If you need help, I'm here." He slid the note under Zeri's door and waited, heart thumping. No reply came, but the humming paused, then resumed more softly. Caleb held his breath, wondering if trust could be made in a single message. That night, he tiptoed back to his door and lay listening. The sound was quieter, almost distant. Caleb imagined Zeri, reading the note with racing thoughts. His own chest tightened with hope. Maybe his offer mattered. He drifted into a restless sleep, dreams filled with dancing lights and unfamiliar shapes. On the third night, the hum changed tone. It rose and fell like ocean waves. The shimmer grew stronger, casting shifting patterns on the hallway walls. Caleb's resolve gave way to urgent curiosity. He crept to the door, opened it a crack, and looked inside. Beyond the threshold, Zeri stood bathed in pale light, their silhouette elongated and graceful. The walls around them glowed with swirling symbols, as if the room itself were alive. Zeri's form flickered between human and something more, limbs gently reshaping, skin sparkling like night stars. Caleb's breath caught in his throat. He felt both awe and a sharp burst of fear. Realizing he had intruded, Caleb backed away and closed the door without a sound. In the darkness of his room, he pressed his back against the wall, heart racing. He wondered how Zeri must feel, exposed, confused, or perhaps relieved that someone had witnessed their secret. All night, Caleb wrestled with regret and longing. He knew he had broken a boundary, yet something deep inside urged him to bridge the distance between them. By morning, he had made a quiet decision. As dawn broke, Caleb carried a small tray of warm pastries to Zeri's door. The smell of fresh bread and sweet fruit filled the hallway. He knocked gently and called, "May I come in?" Zeri opened the door, their gentle eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Caleb offered the pastries and said softly, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry, I only want to help." Zeri studied him, light dancing in their gaze. Finally, they stepped aside and said, "Come in." In that opening, trust began to grow to beings, reaching across difference, ready to share their true selves at last. Caleb stepped into Zeri's room on quiet feet, the tray of pastries trembling slightly in his hands. The door swung open to reveal a space unlike any other. Thin rods of light arced across the ceiling, casting soft rainbows on the walls. Shelves held rows of small vials, each glowing with its own color: emerald green, deep violet, and pale silver. A low hum vibrated in the air, soothing yet full of power. Caleb felt his chest tighten with awe. Here was the heart of Zeri's secret life, and he was finally invited inside. Zeri closed the door behind him and placed a gentle hand on Caleb's arm. "Thank you for coming," they said, voice warm and calm. Zeri set the pastries down and moved toward a simple stool in the center of the room. "I want to show you who I really am," Zeri whispered. They reached up, slipping off a loose hood and letting silvery hair spill over their shoulders. Caleb's breath caught at the sight of Zeri's true form beginning to emerge. Soft light pulsed from Zeri's skin as thin, graceful limbs shifted at the joints, extending and bending in ways no human limb could. Their eyes widened to reveal luminous irises that seemed to flow like liquid starlight. Patterns of glowing lines traced along their arms and neck, like living circuitry. Caleb stood frozen, heart pounding, as Zeri's shape gently morphed taller, more lithe, less bound by human bone. Yet every motion was peaceful, almost musical. Caleb felt tears prick his eyes at the beauty of it. When the transformation slowed, Zeri's form glowed softly in the lamplight, every movement fluid and calm. They folded their arms and met Caleb's gaze. "I trust you," Zeri said, voice deeper but still gentle. "I did not wish to frighten you." Caleb's voice trembled. As he whispered back, "I am not afraid, I am honored." He stepped forward and placed a hand on Zeri's glowing arm. The skin felt warm, like smooth glass under sunlight. Zeri smiled, patterns flickering as they shifted. I come from a world called Illyria, they explained, a place of floating cities and open skies. My people study living worlds, and Earth was my greatest wonder. I chose you because of your kindness, the way you offered help with no judgment. Caleb's chest swelled with pride. He thought of his small life on Earth, his few friends, his work at the factory, and felt it mattered more than ever. Caleb set the pastries on a low table and sat beside Zeri. On Earth, we find meaning in small things, he said. Music, laughter, art. We build stories to share our hopes. He closed his eyes and described his favorite song, how it made him feel alive. Zeri listened, head tilted, and when Caleb finished, Zeri hummed in appreciation. Your world is rich with feeling, Zeri said. I want to learn everything I can. They spent hours talking, trading stories of two very different homes. Zeri showed Caleb holoimages of Illyria's floating gardens, and Caleb described Earth's busy streets and quiet forests. With each exchange, Caleb felt a bridge growing between them, two beings from opposite stars finding friendship through simple truth. He realized that his gift wasn't superpowers or high-tech skills, but empathy and an open heart. When the first light of dawn crept through the window, Zeri gently shifted back into human form. They folded away their alien features and draped the hood over their head. Caleb watched, awed by how much he had seen and how much more he understood. Before he left the room, Caleb reached out and touched Zeri's shoulder. Thank you for trusting me, he said softly. Zeri's eyes gleamed with warmth. And thank you for being brave, they replied. That night, as Caleb lay in bed, he thought of the glowing vials, the patterns of light on Zeri's skin, and the bond they had forged. His world had grown far larger than the small apartment. In the quiet of his mind, he whispered a hope that one day, humans and Illyrians would walk true paths together, guided by kindness, wonder, and the simple power of being seen and understood. Caleb woke early and found Zeri already in the living room, adjusting a small device on the coffee table. The soft hum of the machine filled the air. Steam rose from 2 mugs of green tea that Caleb had prepared. He set one in front of Zeri and smiled. I thought we might try something new today, he said. Zeri tilted their head, eyes bright with curiosity. Together, they sat on the couch, hands near but not touching, warmth building between them. Zeri pressed a button and the device projected a small hologram above the table. Soft lights painted a miniature sky filled with floating gardens and winged creatures gliding through pastel clouds. Caleb watched, mouth open in wonder. He had never seen anything so beautiful. When the scene shifted to a city of gleaming towers, he felt a pang of longing for a world he had never known. Zeri looked at him and saw tears in his eyes. Gently, they reached out and brushed a hand across the hologram, sending the gardens dancing away in a swirl of color. Caleb laughed softly, wiping his cheek. Your home is amazing, he whispered. Zeri smiled and said, Earth is full of wonders too. They switched the device and a new image appeared. Tall trees bending in the wind, a silver river shining under moonlight, distant mountains glowing with sunset. Zeri's face lit up. This is home, Caleb said, pointing to the river. Zeri studied the scene and whispered, I would love to see it one day. After the display ended, Caleb picked up a small, smooth stone from his pocket and set it beside Zeri's mug. This is a river rock from the mountains near my home, he said. Zeri lifted it carefully and turned it over in their palm. The rock felt cool and solid. Zeri's eyes shone. A piece of your world, they said. Caleb nodded, heartwarming. It felt like sharing a secret part of himself. Outside, wind began to whip around the building, rattling windows. Dark clouds roiled across the sky, and a distant rumble of thunder grew closer. Caleb glanced at the window and frowned. A storm, he said. Zeri rose and moved to the window, their figure framed by shifting light. The device may not work. In a power surge, they said calmly. Suddenly, the hum cut out. The room went dark except for the faint glow of the hologram device's standby lights. Caleb's breath caught. He groped for his phone and turned on the flashlight. Zeri's case lay closed on the shelf, and they moved toward it with graceful steps. Caleb followed, heart pounding. They reached the breaker box in the hallway and found the main switch had tripped. Caleb fumbled the handle, but it stuck, he warned. I can't get it back on. Behind him, Zeri placed a soft hand on his shoulder. Stay calm, they said. Their touch felt warm and steady. Together, they pressed against the switch. With a click, the lights flickered back on. In the bright hallway, Zeri's case opened itself and released a gentle glow that lit the corridor in soft silver. Zeri lifted a small tool and pressed it against the breaker box. A ripple of light healed the contacts, sealing them tight. Caleb watched in awe. Within seconds, the glow faded. The hallway light stayed steady. Caleb exhaled and laughed. We did it, he said. Zeri smiled, relief in their eyes. They turned and met Caleb's gaze. For a moment, the world paused. Their hands brushed as they both reached for the device. On the shelf, electricity buzzed softly. but not dangerously. They had worked together, each using their strength, Caleb's resolve, and Ziri's technology to solve a simple crisis. Back in the living room, they sat again on the couch. The storm raged outside, but inside felt safe. Ziri's patterns of light flickered faintly under their skin, as if echoing the energy of the projector. Caleb reached out and touched Ziri's hand. The skin was smooth and warm, pulses of soft color shifting beneath. Caleb's heart fluttered. Ziri's voice was quiet. "Thank you for helping," they said. Caleb squeezed their hand. "Thank you for trusting me." In that moment, neither feared the other's secrets. The storm's thunder seemed distant. Two beings from different worlds had found common ground. That night, as Caleb lay awake in bed, he thought of the glowing gardens, the cool riverstone, and the gentle strength in Ziri's touch. He felt a hopeful warmth spreading through him. Tomorrow would bring new discoveries. Tonight, he dreamed of floating cities and silver rivers, and the simple power of friendship shining brighter than any storm. One bright morning, Caleb found Ziri in the living room, studying a small plant he had brought in. He set down to travel mugs of warm tea and said, "Today, I want to share one of my favorite places with you." Ziri's eyes glimmered, and they nodded with gentle excitement. They stepped out into the sunlit street together, leaving behind the apartment's quiet hum. Caleb led Ziri down a narrow lane, where colorful walls showed murals of old city scenes. Ziri paused at each painting, tilting their head, as if trying to learn its secret story. Inside the art gallery, pale light fell on rows of framed paintings. Ziri moved slowly between them, fingertips brushing the glass in wonder. They stopped before a painting of a lonely tree bending over a quiet river. Ziri drew in a soft breath and whispered, "This feels like hope and sadness at once." Caleb smiled, surprised at how well Ziri read the mood. He said, "Humans paint feelings we cannot always speak." Ziri's lips curved into a small smile, and they glanced at Caleb with warmth. Caleb showed Ziri a sculpture of two hands nearly touching. He explained how it spoke of friendship and trust. Ziri studied each curve of the metal and said, "On my world, we make song crystals that sing when friends hold them." Caleb's eyes widened. "I would love to hear one someday," he replied. Ziri reached into a pocket and produced a tiny crystal. It glowed softly in their palm. When they held it near Caleb, a gentle tone rang out pure and clear. Tears filled Caleb's eyes at the gift of music. After the gallery, Caleb led Ziri to a small cafe across the street. He ordered 2 cups of hot cocoa and a slice of berry cake. They sat by the window, watching people pass in the golden light. Ziri took a careful sip and let out a small laugh. "Sweet like sunshine," they said. Caleb laughed too and said, "That's how I feel when I learn from you." Between bites of cake, they talked about their favorite tastes. Caleb loved spicy food. Ziri adored fruits that glowed under alien skies. They both realized how simple joys could be so special. Back at the apartment, Caleb showed Ziri his favorite song on an old music player. He pressed play, and a soft melody filled the room. Ziri's form brightened with shifting colors beneath their skin. They closed their eyes and let the notes wash over them. When the song ended, Ziri opened their eyes and said, "Your music carries memory and feeling. It moves me." Caleb felt his heart swell. He touched Ziri's hand and said, "Music helped me understand you more." Later, Ziri invited Caleb into their private corner of the room. They opened the black case on the shelf and lifted out a small hollow projector. With a gentle touch, Ziri cast a shimmering scene of Illyria's floating gardens and dancing lights. Caleb watched, breathless. Flowers the size of houses glowed under twin moons, and winged creatures glided through lavender skies. Tears slid down Caleb's cheeks at the beauty of this world he had only heard about. Ziri reached out and rested a hand on Caleb's shoulder. "Now you know why I came here," they said softly. As dusk fell, they moved to the balcony with mugs of tea. Caleb pointed at the first evening star. Ziri smiled and raised a finger, marking a different star beyond Earth's sky. "That is the home I remember." Their voices became quiet, and a calm trust settled between them. Caleb looked at Ziri and said, "I am proud to know you." Ziri's skin glowed in gentle waves. "And I am proud to call you friend," they replied. That night, as Caleb lay in bed, he thought of art, music, shared tea, and the starry sky. His world felt wider, filled with color and sound he had never known. He felt deep wonder and hope glowing in his heart. Somewhere out there, in an alien sky, Ziri's people waited. But here, in this small apartment, 2 friends from different worlds had found a new story, one of trust, curiosity, and the simple power of sharing small moments. Together, Caleb woke before dawn, the pale light of early morning slipping through the curtains. He found Ziri in the living room, kneeling beside a slender device that looked like a tall glass cylinder filled with softly glowing liquid. Ziri's fingers danced over touch controls, adjusting settings with careful precision. When Caleb stirred, Ziri looked up and offered a gentle smile. "Will you help me?" they asked. Caleb nodded, his heart fluttering with both excitement and pride. Together, they moved a small work table beside the device. Caleb set out clean cloths and simple tools while Ziri explained in soft words. This measures life energy in samples, Zeri said. I need to collect data to send to my people. Caleb listened closely, amazed that such an advanced instrument could fit in their tiny apartment. He gently held the sample vial steady as Zeri calibrated the sensors. As the device hummed to life, Caleb watched numbers and colored lights dance across a floating holodisplay. The sample leaf from Caleb's window plant glowed in the chamber, pulsing with each reading. Caleb felt a rush of wonder. It is beautiful, he whispered. Zeri's skin shimmered with pale blue patterns. Earth life has a richness my people cherish, Zeri replied. Caleb felt emotional, knowing his small gift held deep meaning. They spent the next hour gathering readings. Every time Zeri explained a chart or waveform, Caleb asked questions, eager to learn. Zeri's gentle patience made Caleb feel capable and important. When a reading spiked unexpectedly, Zeri's brow furrowed. They adjusted the device's focus, and then smiled as the data smoothed. You have a good eye, Zeri said, touching Caleb's wrist in thanks. Caleb's heart warmed at the simple touch. At midday, Zeri paused the experiment and led Caleb to the holodisplay. I must speak with my council, Zeri said. Worry flickered in their luminous eyes. They decide if sharing this data will risk Earth. Caleb's chest tightened. He stood by Zeri's side and said, Your council must know how kind Earth can be. I trust you. Zeri nodded, drawing strength from Caleb's words. With a soft chime, the device switched modes. A three-dimensional portal opened in mid-air, showing a circle of tall figures seated around a bright table. Their faces were kind but unreadable, like carved crystal. Zeri bowed slightly and spoke in a gentle, flowing tongue. Caleb watched as meters on the display showed rising approval. He held his breath, feeling proud that his help had brought this moment. After a few minutes, Zeri ended the call. The portal faded, leaving only soft light in its place. Zeri turned to Caleb, relief shining across their features. My people agree to cooperate, Zeri said, voice soft with gratitude. They will send a research team to learn alongside us. Caleb let out a breath he did not know he held. He smiled broadly, feeling the weight of this friendship across worlds. That evening, Caleb cooked a simple meal of roasted vegetables and warm bread. Zeri helped by chopping herbs with careful movements. The apartment filled with homey scents. As they ate, Caleb described how generations of his family shared recipes and stories at every meal. Zeri listened, nodding, and then shared a memory of Illyria, how song crystals chimed during communal feasts under violet skies. They laughed together at the thought of aliens and humans sharing food side by side. When the dishes were done, they sat together on the couch, hands touching as they watched the city lights beyond the window. Caleb felt his world had grown larger and brighter. Zeri rested their head on Caleb's shoulder and whispered, Thank you for showing me Earth's true heart. Caleb closed his eyes and smiled, the soft glow of Zeri's patterns echoing his own hope. That night, Caleb lay awake, thinking of the day's events. He pictured the glowing device, the calm faces of the Illyrian Council, and Zeri's shining eyes. He felt honored to be a bridge between two worlds. In the quiet of the apartment, he whispered a promise to himself, to keep learning, to keep trusting, and to help build a future where kindness could span the stars. Early on a clear morning, Caleb woke to the sound of a gentle knock at the door. His heart beat fast. He had waited for this day for a long time. When he opened the door, 3 tall strangers stood there. Each wore smooth robes of pale blue fabric that caught the light. They held simple satchels and a small device that glowed faintly. They looked calm and kind. Caleb felt pride and nervousness both. He stepped aside and said, Welcome. The strangers bowed slightly, and with Zeri by his side, Caleb guided them inside to the living room. Zeri. Single quotes. Eyes shone with soft light as they introduced Caleb. This is my friend. Caleb, he showed me true kindness. One of the strangers spoke in a gentle Illyrian tongue, and Zeri translated, We come from the Research Council. Zeri said, We wish to learn from Earth. Caleb smiled and gestured to the chairs around the coffee table. The visitors sat, their robes rustling like wind over glass. Caleb felt his cheeks warm. He poured tea into simple cups and offered pastries on a small plate as the tea steamed in their hands. The council members examined the room with gentle curiosity. One asked, What is this bread called? Zeri whispered the translation, Pastries from Earth. Caleb offered one to each visitor. They bit slowly and closed their eyes in delight. Sweet, one murmured, voice soft. Caleb laughed quietly. It felt amazing to share a taste of his home with alien guests. Outside, the city stirred, but inside was a calm world made of trust and small wonders. Next, Caleb lifted the riverstone he had given Zeri weeks before. He placed it in the palm of the nearest council member. The alien's fingers wrapped around it with care. On the holodisplay, Zeri showed how the stone's energy had helped them measure life. The council watched the charts with nods. Caleb saw respect in their eyes. He felt honored. In that moment, he was not just a human on Earth, he was an ambassador for all humanity, showing how simple gifts can bridge vast galaxies. One researcher leaned forward and asked about human friendship. Zeri translated, and Caleb spoke from his heart. Friendship means trust and sharing small moments. It is the light we carry when times are dark. The council members listened in silence. Then one placed a hand over their chest in a sign of thanks. Caleb's heart swelled. He realized that words, when true, could travel across worlds without losing meaning. Before they left, Zeri stood and faced the council. Their patterns of light pulsed gently. Caleb taught me Earth's true heart, Zeri said. His kindness changed how we see your world. The council bowed deeply. One spoke. We will build a future where Illyria and Earth learn side by side. Zeri turned to Caleb and said, this is your gift to all of us. Caleb felt tears of joy. In the hallway, the council collected their satchels and waved farewell. The door closed softly behind them. Silence filled the apartment. Caleb and Zeri stood side by side, hands almost touching. Neither spoke for a long moment. Then Caleb gently squeezed Zeri's hand. We did it, he whispered. Zeri's skin glowed in soft waves. Yes, they replied. Together, that night, Caleb lay in bed, thinking of the day's events. He saw the strangers' gentle faces and remembered the taste of shared pastries. He felt pride in his simple life, knowing it had helped build a new bridge between worlds. Somewhere beyond Earth, Illyrian ships prepared to bring more friends. And here, in the quiet apartment, two roommates, one human, one alien, prepared to face a future filled with wonder, trust, and the bright promise of friendship across the stars.